Jesus heals 10 lepers, and one comes back to say thank you. Were not 10 made clean? Jesus asks. But the other 9, where are they? Several of us parents in the congregation spent our Saturday morning together yesterday in a parenting class here at the church. Like any gathering in our community, there were people from a wide variety of backgrounds and cultures present. And while there are, of course, lots of differences in the cultural backgrounds we bring to raising children, I couldn't help but notice how much many of the goals we have really are the same. I think we all want to raise children who are compassionate and thoughtful and curious and resilient and kind. And I'm pretty sure we all want to raise children who say, thank you. I would be willing to bet that no matter where you come from, your family worked to teach you that same thing. As soon as we can talk, someone is saying to us, now, what do you say? And we know the answer is probably please or thank you. We tend to teach gratitude as a matter of politeness, and there's an element of that for sure. It's just not nice to skip saying thank you when someone gives you a gift or shows you some kindness. But is that all that there is to gratitude? If we read the story from the gospel today with politeness in mind, then Jesus is happy with this one leper because of the 10 who were healed, he had the best manners. If we read it that way, it's basically a story about being nice and saying thank you. The thing is, I don't think Jesus gave too many lessons on having good manners and being nice. I think we miss something if we stop there. It seems like a pretty simple story on the surface. Jesus is passing through a boundary region. He seems to love those in-between places. It's a boundary between Samaria and Galilee. And while he's walking along the road, 10 people with leprosy cry out to him from a distance. From a distance. That's part of the disease, you know. Leprosy didn't only affect one's skin, but also one's place in the community. Those with this condition were kept perpetually at a distance, far off, so others could feel safe. Jesus sees these people, who many probably ignore, and he has compassion on them and heals them. You know where the story goes from there. We also read this passage at our Congregational Council retreat a week ago. It immediately sparked rich discussion, and in the midst of the conversation, somebody observed that there are really 2 separate pronouncements of healing in the story. Of course, there's the first one, the obvious one. Jesus heals these 10 people suffering from leprosy, suffering from this isolating and life-crippling disease. Their skin is physically healed. And as a component of that physical healing, Jesus sends them also to the priests, who can pronounce them clean and thereby restore them to community. With a priest's authorization in this culture, you were then free to rejoin society. So there's that level of healing, the kind we usually think about, the kind that's very tangible and visible. But there's another kind of healing that takes place in this story, and Jesus only speaks it at the very end. The one man comes back and lays himself at Jesus' feet and thanks him, speaking words of gratitude. And Jesus, after asking about the others who didn't come back, looks at this one at his feet and says, "Your faith has made you well." A more literal translation is actually, "Your faith has saved you." I'm guessing our Bible doesn't use that saving language because it's so often loaded with our own associations when it comes to saving, like that always has to be about eternal heaven and hell stuff. But the word salvation has healing as its root. It's about being healed in the most complete, fundamental way. It's about being made whole, being made well. That's what Jesus says to the one who alone expresses his gratitude. Your faith has made you well. There's really very little difference between this guy and the other 9. 10 cried out by the side of the road. 10 were given the free gift of healing. 10 set off to do what Jesus said and go visit the priest. But this guy alone practiced gratitude. This guy alone was thankful. And for him, there was a deeper level of healing that took place. Your faith, or maybe your gratitude, has made you well. Brother David Steindl-Rast is a Benedictine monk from Austria who has spent years thinking and writing about gratitude. And in a TED talk that he gave on the subject recently, Yes, monks do give TED Talks sometimes, and can even get more than 5 million views. He said that while everyone thinks they know what gratefulness is about, we usually get it wrong. We imagine that happiness leads to gratitude. So when I'm feeling good about something, I'm grateful for it, and then I say thanks. We wait to be grateful until we feel like it. We think it works that way, but it's actually the other way around, he says. Happiness doesn't lead to gratitude, but gratitude leads to happiness. Being grateful, intentionally engaging in gratitude as a practice, actually improves the way that we feel. The process he gives for practicing gratitude is so sort of incredibly simple, I almost hesitate to share it. But here's what he says. Stop, look, and go. Stop what you're doing, even for 30 seconds, he says. This is probably the toughest part, I think. If you do this, you are most of the way there. We often march through our days so quickly with few or no intentional pauses, blazing from one thing to the next, and it's hard to practice much of anything very intentionally that way. So that's the first step. Stop. Then look at what's happening. Look at this unique moment that's been given to you right now. The opportunities around you, the gifts of breath and life and love. Look at what is there to be thankful for in this precise moment. And then go. Decide how you will respond this minute, going forward with the awareness of what you have to be grateful for. Going forward with this whole process that maybe takes a minute. It couldn't be simpler, but the process of gratitude can do something amazing in us. In that TED Talk I mentioned, Brother David doesn't speak about this morning's story from Luke, but I am struck by how it mirrors what he says exactly. All 10 lepers run off to see the priests and show their newly healed skin. But only one of them does what Brother David says. He stops in the middle of all the action around him. He could have kept going, making a victory lap around town or going out for a celebratory meal, posting about the miracle immediately on Facebook. There's always plenty to do, but this one stopped in the middle of the activity. And he looked. The passage even says it. One of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back. He took a moment to really see and acknowledge what had just happened, what he had to be grateful for. And he went. He let his gratitude change his direction and shape his acting, so that he went and thanked Jesus for the healing he'd received. Your faith has made you well, Jesus tells the one practicing gratitude. I'm sure Brother David would agree, and if you want somebody else to weigh in, scientists today are finding exactly the same thing. Numerous studies have been done in recent years that all show the effect of gratitude on the brain. And while the specifics are basically way over my head, there is broad agreement that among researchers that something actually happens. People who practice gratitude regularly, maybe writing down 3 things each day that you are grateful for. People who do something in practicing gratitude seem to actually rewire their brains. They come at life with greater optimism and hopefulness. They see the world differently. So we are starting a fall emphasis on stewardship in our church today. Over the coming weeks, we are going to be thinking and praying and speaking about how we can each support our congregation's ministry in the year ahead. We're going to be asking you to think about how you can offer your time and your talents and your money. That's all coming. But before we get to any of that, we have to begin with gratitude. We have to begin with the truth that everything actually belongs to God. This moment, the breath in our lungs, our lives, our resources, all of it is actually God's, and our role is to care for it faithfully. That starts with being grateful. We've been practicing this a little bit right now, passing these green leaves around the room, and if you haven't already done so, do take a moment to write something down that you are grateful for. It could be as simple as this new day, or as specific as an event in the last year. All of this doesn't mean that we ignore the hurts in our lives or in the world. We don't ignore what's happening in Aleppo, but we give thanks for this day all the same. This day when we can pray for an end to violence and take steps toward a future of justice and peace. Giving thanks is an essential way to get outside ourselves and actively remember the truth that our lives are held in a web of grace. We are actually surrounded by innumerable gifts and held in a great love that sees us, that claims us, that frees us for life and joy and community. It's true no matter what, but we recognize that truth better when we take the time to acknowledge it. So friends, that's my invitation for you this morning. Practice gratitude, and not just when you feel like it, but maybe particularly when you don't. And don't just do it because it's polite. Do it because it's true. Do it because it heals something deep inside. Do it because it makes us well. Amen.